Friday the 1st of May and it's just 6 days till the next general election.
But this year, the North East has an extremely important role to play. Whoever wins the most constituencies in the region will likely win the election itself. But there's one issue that isn't being told: opportunities for the next generation, and students aren't getting that essential coverage.
So we're hosting a panel of 4 parliamentary candidates and 1 local of the 5 main parties, so you can decide who's in power.
And in a moment's time, the lights will come up, the candidates will be seated, and they'll be ready for action.
Let the debate commence.
Hello and welcome to the North Crowd Special Political Debate.
We've been talking to many first-time voters over the last few weeks to see what the important issues are for you. And today we'll be talking to candidates from 5 different parties about opportunities for the next generation.
So let's welcome our panel for today. Joining us is Drew Durning, the Stockton South parliamentary candidate for the Liberal Democrats.
Terry Loughton, the Labour Council candidate for Brambles Farm.
Steve Turner, UK parliamentary candidate for Middlesbrough South and East Cleveland.
Simon Clark, the Middlesbrough candidate for the Conservatives.
And Hannah Graham, Middlesbrough candidate for the Green Party.
Thank you all for joining us today.
So, we're going to start off with quite an obvious issue that's going on with students, tuition fees. Drew Durning, I'll come to you first. Obviously, in recent years, your party's probably taken the biggest blame for this. So, really, how do you expect students to support you in this election?
Well, I think you need to look at the impact of the policy. The first thing is you pay nothing up front. The second thing is you don't start paying until you're earning over 21,000, which is a lot higher than it was before. So lower paid graduates are now better off. And that has actually converted into more students from disadvantaged backgrounds. That's up 75% in the last 10 years. And, sorry,
Are we all right? Yeah. Sorry, keep going, continue, it's all right.
Sorry, and that's... I've lost my there. Yeah, so we've got 75% more students from disadvantaged backgrounds over the last 10 years, and actually a record number of students in total. So, although we did change our mind about that policy because of the situation that we were in going into coalition, the actual policy that we came up with works like the graduate tax, which was our policy at that time.
Simon Clark?
Yeah, well, you judge any policy by its outcomes. And as Drew was saying, application rates from the most disadvantaged people in society to university have risen from 18% to 21% over the last 4 years. And entry rates from the most disadvantaged people in our society to university have also gone up from 18% to 21%. So whatever else it's done, this has not had a socially regressive effect. You don't pay back fees, and this is really the key point, until you're earning enough money to do so sensibly. And this is a progressive policy, insofar as the interest rates you pay back when you hit the 21,000 threshold are tiered according to your income. So what we've done is ensure that there is proper funding available for universities. The alternative, after all, is that universities are underfunded, that we don't have the places that we need, and that the quality of teaching declines. And the Labour Party has been spinning a ridiculous line over the last few weeks, which has been criticised resoundingly by university vice-chancellors up and down the country, making this pledge that they will cut the fees, and they do that with no clear idea where the rest of the money to make up that shortfall would come from, because with the public finances in the condition that they left them to us, there simply isn't the money for the general taxpayer to pick up the tab.
Terry Loughton, your party's planning on taking tuition fees down to £6,000. Do you think that's enough?
No, I don't, but I think it's a start. And I think that after the betrayal of the promises and pledges made by the Lib Dems at the last election, which is disgraceful to say they were persuaded by the Conservative argument to triple fees, I think it's a pure abdication of responsibility for breaking that promise. Now, the Labour Party, Ed Miliband, has taken this on. It's reducing tuition fees by 1/3. And it would only be very wealthy people who could possibly say that this would have an adverse effect on the poorest students. What absolute nonsense. It's about time we started getting priorities right. Students are the future, and we should be ensuring that we can look after and safeguard their interest in getting a job, not leaving college with an enormous debt, and letting them go into the world with a blank checkbook and able to develop themselves.
Jude's earning. So, sorry, can we go with Jude's earning first?
The impact of reducing fees to £6,000 means that the highest paid graduates are better off. The ones earning an average of over 35,000 are the ones that will benefit from this policy. All of the lower paid graduates...
You can talk to each other, by the way, so yeah.
All of the lower paid graduates will pay exactly the same amount in tax over the period after their graduation. And it's a policy that benefits the bankers most.
What absolute nonsense. It's going to leave 75% of the students won't be able to afford to earn wages that will pay back this debt. It's going to leave an enormous black hole approaching £40 billion in the economy. And you have the nerve to sit there and say that the Lib Dems have done a good job with tuition fees. I think you should seriously consider your position.
I'd love to see what the foundation is for the 40 billion a year black hole claim that you've just made. The bottom line is that under these arrangements, as I say, you don't pay back the fees until you're earning at the threshold where they kick in. And the amount you pay is tiered according to your income. So what the policy the Labour Party has devised is that you would end up better off under the Labour policy if you are actually earning more. So it's the richest who benefit more from your position, as opposed to the coalition position, which is actually fairer generally across the board.
Rich people would...
Sorry, can we go to Steve Turner?
Yeah. I'm actually, back to the original question, I'm really pleased the Lib Dems had to cave on what they promised, because as a country we can't afford free tuition fees, we can't. We've got this policy, most of the main parties have this policy of trying to put 50% of people, pushing them into higher education. 70% of those that come out with a degree don't end up working in the area in which their degree is. And so what we get is we get a bunch of people with good degrees who've worked hard to get those degrees, but then they're working in low paid jobs. So we're not paying it back. As a country, we're paying for those things. What UKIP would do is they would only fund degrees in science, technology, economics, maths, medicine, the skills we need, the skills we haven't got, the skills we're having to import from other places. And let's allow those people to train and be paid to train from whatever background, right? And then let's move forward. We can't afford to just keep giving money to everybody that wants to study a degree. Economically, that's just not viable.
Can I just ask there? Sorry, you're talking about obviously like giving degrees to kind of like the technological areas.
STEM
what
subjects,
about creative areas? Why haven't you focused on those as well?
Because right now in this country there isn't a shortage of people with those type of skills. We have got a shortage of doctors, we have got a shortage of mathematicians, of engineers, of technologists. Right? That's where we've got to spend our focus first. We've got to look at what we do in the short term and then move forward. I agree with you. There are so many creative people that need that support and need that help, but right now in this country and where we are economically, we can't afford it. And if we can't afford it, then we can't afford it.
So what you're saying is you'll give free tuition fees to doctors. Is that your policy?
To come out, we would give free tuition fees for anybody
people
studying
who are
a STEM
going to come out on
subject.
six-figure salaries are the ones that you would choose.
Because those are the skills. Those are the skills we need. Yes.
Hannah Graham, your party takes a more kind of creative and liberal approach on this. What do you think?
So I think I'd just like to start by saying that free education is possible. It's obviously a Green Party policy to have free education if we were to become elected. University education is free in Scotland. Germany's recently abolished tuition fees as well. Why can't we join a whole host of other countries that have just done that? The Green Party line is that how this would be achieved would be by increasing corporation tax and also an income tax, higher income tax on the top 5% of the country's earners as well. I disagree with UKIP. I believe education is for everyone, regardless of what you want to study. I think education obviously benefits this country massively. We wouldn't have, like you were saying, we wouldn't have people with skill. We wouldn't have like doctors. We wouldn't have people, highly trained, skilled professionals if it wasn't for education. So why not offer it for free? We could save billions and billions of pounds in this country by clamping down on tax evasion as well. People that are avoiding paying their tax. That would also be Green Party policy. And also, I'd just like to urge students not to vote for a party that have broken the pledge in 2010 as well.
Simon?
Well, free education would be lovely if we had a magic money tree. But Hannah's point there about raising corporation tax, increasing income tax, these policies come with consequences. The biggest success of the government over the last 5 years has been job creation. We've got 1.9 million more people in work. I believe the central reason why that's the case is that we have cut corporation tax from 28% to 20%. We've reduced the burden on companies, we've freed them to hire, we've increased their ability to create the jobs which we need. Similarly, wealth creators. Hannah talks about hiking income tax on the highest earners. We know that the highest earners in our society are a very mobile group. If we create disincentives for people to earn and live in this country, we'll see exactly the sort of flight of talent which we've seen from countries like France, which have pursued high tax, high spend policies.
I think that it shows the focus of some parties. It's about cash, and it's no good hiding behind the story that without a strong economy we can't have all of the other good things. What's more important within our community is that we look after each other. When you have someone like Philip Green, an advisor to the Treasury and to the Prime Minister, who avoids paying £300 million tax by transferring to his wife in Monaco, and then you talk about retaining those people.
Personal issues.
I beg your pardon.
I think
But I do get passionate about these things. However, back on
the
the prospect of education. Education is the one tool that sets people free. The knowledge of what is going on around them, the ability to evaluate what people's contributions are to a society that wants to look after the least well off within it.
But what does that even mean if you don't have the
I'll
money?
tell you what it means. It means that instead of concentrating on feeding the richest people in society with free tuition fees such as doctors, millionaires
Hang
with
on,
house
that's
fees.
not the Conservative Party's policy,
The
Terry.
Conservative
Come
Party
on.
has discovered a money tree which George Osborne has been promising these giveaways to millionaires, and yet
Not
he's been able to
giveaways
fund
to
them. And you talk about
millionaires.
money trees. George Osborne's
we'll
found
finish
one.
there and then we'll come back to you, Simon.
One of the impacts of the tuition fees policy has been that the universities are now properly funded again. Under Labour, they were struggling on a daily basis to pay the wages and having to cut back on the number of lecturers. Labour's new policy threatens that again, because once again they will be relying on government grants instead of the actual fees to pay them. And we know what will happen. As soon as there's some pressure, those grants will be cut and the universities will be in trouble again.
Exactly.
Is that a pledge?
It's not a
Is that
pledge,
a-
it's a
is that a
warning.
pledge? Is that another promise?
It's an impact of your policy, that's what I'm saying.
I'll just take one more comment from Steve Turner.
I can't believe that we're suggesting that only rich people become doctors. Why can't people from disadvantaged backgrounds go on and study medicine and this, that and the other? It's not...
But you don't pay fees up front, you pay a tax after you've
It's not
you've
the
graduated.
provision of the rich to become doctors. So when you make it about class and society, it's not. Right, education should be there for the best and the brightest. Right, and what I'm saying is not everybody in this country, right, will go on to university. Not everybody can become a doctor. Not everybody can become an airline pilot. Not everybody can become a technician. All right, so you can't just say education is there for everybody, then suggest that only rich people go on to become doctors. It's just wrong.
But once they qualify, they then become in a privileged position, and then you are saying that they shouldn't have responsibility for repaying those fees, which allow them to get into that privileged position.
I thought you were about cutting the fees, though, Terry. This is the point, isn't it?
Well,
You're
that's
cutting
right.
the fees for the richest
in my
in
opinion,
society.
You make it free.
You're
we would
digging your own grave
target
here. You're
Okay,
zero
one
fees.
person at a
Richest
time,
in
please.
society.
Yeah.
That's right. We want to make sure that everybody gets a free education.
And they
That
do.
is the target.
They do get a free education. They don't pay the fees up front.
I
What
think-
you are doing is you are cutting the amount that the richest in our society will repay. That is absolutely non-progressive.
Only the Tories could argue that.
No, not only
sorry,
the
Terry,
Tories,
it's
they
a
won't
fact.
stand
It's a
for
fact.
policy
I'm trying to get
arguing
personal,
that.
please. I'll come up with something else. Hannah, how realistic do you think your party's policies are in terms of actually providing some of the things that has been talked about in the manifestos? Are you thinking about bringing back EMA? You're going to try and get apprenticeships for everyone 16 to 25, and of course you are going to make higher education free. Is that a realistic achievement? How will you afford it?
Definitely realistic. Like, I've forgotten your name, sorry. Like Terry was saying, obviously education should be for everyone. It shouldn't just be for the richest in society. Like, why shouldn't our students from, especially Middlesbrough, we've got the lowest rate of higher education in the country. It's also the like a lot of students coming from like disadvantaged backgrounds and things like that. Why shouldn't they go on to become doctors, like a professional career and things like that? So can you just EMA, do you say it as well?
Yeah,
like,
education.
yeah, okay, so that benefited our students in further education greatly. When that was pulled, I imagine a lot of students in Middlesbrough face like problems with living. They couldn't afford to live. They couldn't afford to feed themselves. A lot of students as well, they don't live like at home, so that, you know, they have to pay for rent, they have to pay for living costs and things like that. And I think that would be that would be very important, and obviously benefit those students greatly. What else did you say?
Sorry.
What else did you say?
Apprenticeships for everyone 16 to 25.
Okay, yeah. I'm not really sure about that one. Yeah. Does anyone want to chip in?
Well, I think apprenticeships is an opportunity to give young people, whether they're graduating from university or not, an equal start to learn how to fit into a working community. And I think that one of the problems that we have is that we don't view our youngsters, and by youngsters I mean young adults, as being contributors to the Treasury. Therefore, and to a large extent, they don't vote, so they're targets. And they're made targets because it doesn't affect the incumbent government.
Simon Clark.
Well, we've created 2.2 million apprenticeships over the course of the last 5 years. We've seen an enormous increase from the numbers which existed under Labour. I mean, we have made an apprenticeships policy which delivers for young people an absolute priority. We've dropped Labour's 50% target of young people going to university. We think that was arbitrary. It didn't bear any relation to what either the young people or the economy strictly required. Instead, we've removed the cap on the number of young people who can go to university. So there is no limit, but we're not setting, as I say, arbitrary targets. What we are doing is ensuring that there are opportunities available for young people to get apprenticeships. Our policy in our manifesto is that we aim to create 3 million more apprenticeships over the next 5 years. This is something where we are delivering, and we've just announced that from October this year the apprenticeship minimum wage will be increased. And so I think this is somewhere where we are seeing real success, not just in creating opportunity, but in changing the mindset that exists. Apprenticeships mustn't be seen as a second-class opportunity. They must be seen as an equally valid career option. And I think we are getting there.
3 million apprenticeships by 2020. Is that actually a realistic?
Well, as I said, we've delivered
achievement
we've
to get?
delivered 2.2 million over the last 5 years in the teeth of some pretty tough economic circumstances. So if we stick to the plan, if the economy continues to grow, I see absolutely no reason why 3 million isn't achievable in hopefully more benign circumstances in the period to 2020.
Okay, I'll ask a similar question to one that George Osborne got asked the other week when he was up at NIFCO. When they said the same thing, the fact that this announcement has only just been recently come out in the last few months, is this not just a ploy to try and reach out to people in the North East?
Sorry, you're referring to the Chancellor's long-term
Yes.
economic plan for the North East. Well,
Yes.
I was there at the NIFCO launch. It was
Yeah.
a very impressive day. We set out a plan to invest billions in our local transport infrastructure to ensure that the employment rate in the North East, which is already at a record high, it's never been higher. Unemployment in the North East is falling faster than any other region of the UK. We are delivering. What we're doing at the moment is setting out the plan for the next 5 years. But in Middlesbrough, obviously to take the example of the constituency that I'm standing to represent, we've got long-term unemployment down by 43% in the last year alone. We've got youth unemployment down by 42%. We are delivering. This has been a long-term package. This isn't about short-term gimmicks. I think for those, you need to look to Terry and his colleagues. We're actually all about providing a sustained, sensible path which can actually deliver long-term benefits over the course of the next 5 years in the way that we have over the last 5.
Okay.
One of the points that my Conservative friend touched on was the investment in transport. For every £1 spent per head in the North East, £520 per head is spent in London. I think that gives an indication of what sort of house that George Osborne thinks we live in, and it's not a powerhouse. George Osborne's come out with plenty of remarks about how to develop the North East as a powerhouse, but they're only remarks. There's been no action.
Well, hang on.
If you're going to judge a person's heart and politics by what they do, then look at the way that local councils in the North East have been starved at funds, while Conservative councils down south have had their funds increased. We've had to cut back on services simply because George Osborne wanted to penalise those areas that they consider out of reach for their
Well,
votes.
that's simply not true, Terry. The bottom line is that...
It's easy to say that.
Well, yeah, it is, and I can back it up with the
£1
figures.
a head compared to
If you-
£520 a head,
taxpayer,
your quotation.
if you look at the funding available per capita in Middlesbrough, it's nearly £1,000 higher than it is in many southern authorities. So, for example, in Middlesbrough, in this current financial year, you're getting something like £2,400 per head in funding. If you're living in Somerset, it's more like £1,400, £1,500.
That's a county.
Well,
That's a number of towns.
yeah, but it's still about the funding available. No, Terry, I am comparing like with like. This is comparing about the money available in a local authority area. And the bottom line is that yes, we saw under Labour massive increases in funding to their areas, which was geared by your political priorities, to take funding away from southern authorities, which you didn't think were ever going to vote for you. We have attempted some modest rebalancing because there is poverty in rural areas. And when did you start speaking
Modest
to people?
rebalancing?
Modest
Starvation of funds into the northeast.
That is absolutely not true.
Can we just
That is a
keep on the
gross
topic, please?
mischaracterisation.
Drew Durning.
Just on the subject of apprenticeships, it's absolutely right that we've managed to increase apprenticeships by 85% over the course of the Parliament. And Lib Dem policy moving forward is to put a lot more emphasis and funding into apprenticeships and higher apprenticeships, which are really important because those give people the opportunity to get degree level qualifications.
And what do you think about unpaid work experiences? I mean, obviously rich companies taking on students but not giving them sort of expenses and things like that. What do you think about that?
That's targeting. Again, that's targeting students who come from wealthy backgrounds who can afford not to be paid because their parents are able to subsidise them. When you get the majority of people coming from working class backgrounds who are looking for an opportunity to break into big business, who are looking for an opportunity to go to college and study something which may be considered such as history, anything creative, geography. Oh, how are you going to apply that to industry? The point is you show the discipline of learning. And when you go into internships, you should be given the opportunity of allowing that to be put into practice. That the steel and determination of getting a degree and then applying those skills into developing your talents in a creative manner in whatever industry you decide to choose.
I completely agree with Sorry. I completely agree with Terry there. Like, I think unpaid internships are disgusting, and I think that's something that needs to be stopped definitely. Especially for students from the northeast of England and like Middlesbrough in particular. All the best jobs are in London. All like the best graduate jobs are in London. Like, why shouldn't our graduates be able to get one of those jobs? I've heard from many of my friends and like many people that I know, they've gone on and they've had to do like 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes even longer, like unpaid internship before they're even, and sometimes not even offered the job that they've been working for free for the last like 2 or 3 weeks, and sometimes longer as well, which I think that's totally wrong.
Simon?
Well, I disagree with Hannah. All the best jobs are in London. Actually, I think we're starting to see now some really exciting opportunities arising in the northeast, and we are now. If you look at some of the major opportunities opening up with companies like Hitachi. We mentioned NIFCO and the launch there. There are really exciting new opportunities available here. On the point of unpaid internships, I certainly support any company which can afford to pay its interns should certainly do so. But we have, again, this comes back to the point about the opportunities that exist. If companies are forced to pay for internships, they may very well decide just not to offer them at all. It's an imperfect world in that sense.
I think that's unlikely, actually. I think national minimum wage for internships is only right, and
I certainly
and I don't think that will stop the average company that will run an internship program can afford to pay people.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. But we do. I mean, you are right, and I certainly don't support any situation whereby young people are excluded from the chance to learn about how a job works. I mean, there's just a sensible balance to be struck here. You have to be careful not to kill the golden goose in the doing of it.
They're not learning how the job works. They're working for free on these unpaid internships.
Well, we often see a situation whereby an intern comes in, and with all due respect to them, and I've done unpaid internships myself, and when I did unpaid internships,
did you think they were beneficial to you?
I did find they were beneficial to me. I'm not sure they were terribly beneficial to the company I was at, because when you start in these positions, you don't actually really, you're not in the position of being a sort of full-time employee. I mean, you are much more there to learn than to contribute. I mean, in my boss's parliamentary office, whenever we have interns in, we do offer. To help with lunches.
If you were working for nothing?
Well, these are
I'm not crying.
No.
It's just
okay. So
can we
go to Steve Turner because he hasn't spoken in a while? So
I just say, Firstly, I think we've got to differentiate between work experience and internships. I think as we do in a couple of weeks, work experience is one thing and internship is something else.
Yeah.
I actually find myself agreeing with Terry and Hannah that I don't agree that people should work 10, 12, 14 weeks, whatever, for free and not do that, because the companies that do these type of things can afford to do it. Didn't go to university myself, so I can't say I've got experience of doing that. To come back to your original point about apprenticeships, I actually applaud the work the government's done on bringing more apprenticeships, but I think UKIP would take it further. We mentioned the German model of education and things like that. What they do very successfully over there is they start teaching apprenticeships in school, and that's what UKIP would take on. So what we would look to do is we'd look to replace 4 non-course subjects at 14 with apprenticeships to allow people to get that opportunity to start to study and to start to do some of the more classroom-based elements of an apprenticeship before then moving on at 16 into the much more practical stuff. I speak to a lot of young people who get offered apprenticeships at 16, and part of the reason they're looking to go into an apprenticeship is because they weren't as successful at school as they could have been. Maybe the grades weren't where they needed them to be, or potentially couldn't get the grades they needed to move on to something different. So then you say, well, you've got an apprenticeship, but by the way, you're going to spend 1 or 2 days a week at college. That naturally puts people off anyway. If while they're at school, they've done that element of it, and then an apprenticeship becomes a hand-on, whether I'm laying bricks or stripping wires or laying pipes or whatever that is, that's a far better way of doing it, and that would increase not just the amount of apprenticeships available, but actually the success of apprenticeships, because you'd have young people that were going into a trade that had actually had a taste of that and knew what to expect when they got there.
Well, I think any opportunity to develop your talents or discover them at an earlier age by getting somebody interested, by getting people interested at that age. And some of the things that you've said there sound quite good, providing they're not being imposed. Because the danger is then what we're looking to do is take away people from school at the age of 16 and putting them into work, rather than allowing them to develop their educational career. Because for me, it's the education which is the fundamental for all of our society. All the people coming up now, yourselves included, you are the future of our society, and it's better for you to be educated than not to be educated. It's better for you to be educated than purely practical. By the same token, you can develop those skills that you have in any way that you choose to fit.
We're not talking about non-educational people, we're talking about non-core subjects and coming out and doing that. And at 16, if a young person decides they then want to go on and study A-level maths or A-level science, something like that, then they'll have the opportunity to do so because they've still done the core subjects they need to do.
Sounds good.
At 14, I remember being 14 and I didn't know what I wanted, and I could have been pushed from pillar to post in several different directions. I was probably no better at 16, and we sort of meander into these things, and it's a very lucky few that have a very clear vision of what they want to do at such a young age. So we've got to be flexible, we've got to allow people to chop and change, and by giving these people at 14 that maybe don't see an academic career for themselves the opportunity to do something different, it doesn't mean they can't chop and change and move on to something else as they get older, but we've got to be realistic and say lots of our young people are going to pursue a trade. We need a lot more tradespeople in this country, so let's give them the best opportunity to be the best tradesmen they can be without naturally forcing people down a predominantly academic route which just isn't suited to some people in society.
You know, I don't have any experience of ever working for free, simply because I've never been in a position to. And I would never be able to, when I was younger, to have taken on any kind of internship that was without pay. And I'm only asking, without prying, I would love to hear an example of someone who's been able to take on an internship without pay, who's been able, how do you afford to live?
Well, we're talking, I think we're going back to the distinction Steve drew between an internship and work experience. When I was referring to that, we're talking about 1 or 2 week schemes, which they're more like work placements. They weren't internships lasting months.
Oh, right,
so,
right.
So to that extent, it was. I just stayed with relatives. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll move on. We'll move on from there just because I'm slightly aware of time. Just on a bit of a similar point, though. I mean, Steve Turner. I mean, we've looked at the party manifestos. One of the things that you talk about is in terms of immigration, students will still be allowed to come into the UK to study.
Yeah.
But if they do come in, they'll have to maintain their own private health insurance. Isn't that just a way to basically put them off coming? Surely with tuition fees, it's already hard enough for them to come into the country.
Surely not. If somebody's coming to our country to study, we've got some of the best universities, we've got some of the best educators, and I absolutely encourage anybody to come here and study if the thing. But again, and it comes back, and I know we'll say it's not always about money, but actually sometimes it is. Sometimes we have an NHS system that's under strain. Right? Whichever way you want to look at it, it is under strain. And all of the parties at some point have pledged to put more money into that, and that's got to be paid for from somewhere. So I think I can't go on holiday in the summer and not go pitch off abroad without some type of health insurance. Why is it wrong for us to ask people that come to our country to have some form of health insurance?
It seems, though, we talk about the NHS being under pressure and under tremendous stress. And the reason for this, let's make no bones about it, it's because the Tories and the Lib Dems introduced a top-down reorganisation of the NHS for which nobody voted for. Nobody wanted.
The fact that nobody voted for it doesn't mean that we didn't get more doctors and nurses.
Even the Tories didn't want it. So how on earth the Lib Dems could justify voting for it? But when it comes to the NHS, I think what we have to consider is this: do we want a society where people could, for whatever reason, be lying in the street and we walk by them because we can't afford to take them to the hospital?
Nobody's ever said that.
But that's the danger that we're heading towards.
No, it's not. That's absolute scaremongering.
The important thing is the NHS is free at delivery. It has to be free to everybody in the country, irrespective of the origin of where they come from.
Absolutely. And
it has to be free
nobody's
at
ever
point of
said
delivery to
that is
everybody
an
in the country.
absolutely ridiculous statement. If I get knocked down on some main street in Spain tomorrow, then they'll pick me up and take me to hospital. In exactly the same way we would never, nobody, no right-thinking Christian person would ever consider. Right? Yes, it would.
It wouldn't, because
if we weren't in the EU and I'm unconscious, laid in the street, nobody's going to pick me up and take me to a hospital. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is, there'd be no obligation. There'd be no obligation.
Exactly. There would be no obligation
because we would not be EU members, and it's the EU agreement which allows for NHS in this country and similar services abroad.
So if you
to come out of the EU would mean giving that up.
So if you get knocked over in the street in Turkey, does nobody treat you either?
Well, let's say if you get knocked over in the street in America, would you?
I didn't ask actually.
I'm asking you that.
No, but Turkey
we'd be in the same position.
But they'd still take you. They would still take you to a hospital. They would still take you. They would still treat you.
Would you get treated?
Yes, you would get. Nobody in our society is going to let anybody die. Right, you are absolutely talking rubbish. No way on earth would that happen in this country.
Okay, we'll move on. So can we go to Simon Clark first, and then we'll go to...
I'm not going to get weighed into that particular debate, but what I will say is that when Terry starts saying that we have been a danger to the NHS, we just need to look at the figures here. We've invested 12.9 billion more into the NHS over the last 5 years than Labour planned to do when we inherited their plans. Indeed, it was Labour's Andy Burnham who criticised us in 2010, saying that our decision, our commitment to protect the NHS budget was quote-unquote irresponsible. We've got 9,000 more doctors than we had 5 years ago. We've got 7,000 more nurses. We've got 2,000 more midwives. We're doing millions more operations. The NHS is our number one priority. My grandfather, Patrick, was a surgeon at the old Middlesbrough General Hospital for 30 years. We would never betray the interest of the NHS. What would betray the interests of the NHS is if we don't have the national finances in the condition that they need to be in order to invest the extra 8 billion a year that we have committed to over the next 5 years through to 2020 to ensure that everyone can continue to receive the care they need, when they need it, where they need it. True.
The question was actually about things that you can do to attract students from overseas to the UK, or maybe to put them off. And one of the things that the Tory policy on immigration and trying to cut the numbers on immigration has seriously reduced the number of students from India. I've heard that has cost our economy 1.5 billion over the course of the Parliament. as a
Government
country,
policy on immigration.
it is the policy on immigration has made the visas really, really difficult from India, and that has reduced the number of students from India significantly. So, as a country, I think our policy is just to take students out of the immigration figures altogether, and to just stop worrying about it. We actually want to be attracting as many.
So you're in line with UKIP's manifesto then, because that's exactly what we want.
It is actually the same policy.
Okay. See, just to keep in line, because it was actually about immigration and not the NHS. We can come on to that in a bit. But are you not worried that the students like in the UK and outside will not be culturally deprived if we don't keep these relationships going?
In what way?
Just in terms of them coming in and out. If they stop coming in, it'll be harder for students to
But
leave
you
the
said
UK.
yourself, you've looked at the UKIP manifesto, we would take students out of any immigration number, so we've never suggested in any way, shape or form that we would limit the number of students coming from abroad and like we've already said there.
Of the Tory policy, this
well,
one.
like we've already said there, we've cut the number of students coming in from places like India, yet because of our membership of the EU, you can come in from France or Germany or Spain or anywhere. So our policy is very much the case for let's invite anybody to come and study here, but let's put positions in place where we're not inviting them for free tuition fees or cheaper tuition fees. They've got to have some form of health insurance while they're here, right? And we're not just giving them our education. You go to some of the best universities in the world, and you can go there and study, but you can't go there and study for free. So we shouldn't be any different.
Okay, Hannah.
The Green Party line on obviously international students is attract as many international students to this country as possible. I personally feel, being a student at Teesside University, that having international students alongside studying with me definitely improves my well-being, improves my education, improves my study. We have also pledged to allow international students to work in this country for up to 2 years after they graduate, and then obviously allow them to apply for citizenship if they want to. Like they were saying, definitely, like as many international students come to this country as possible. I think also we have to work with organisations like the UKBA to stop the attacks on universities and stop the attacks on international students as well. We've seen it at Teesside, we've seen it at London Met, where the UKBA has attacked our international students, and we've seen lots of international students face deportation in the UK. Why should you rip a student away from their degree in the middle of their study? I think that's it's terrible. It needs to be stopped. Also, I have something else to say, but I'll come back to me. I've forgotten what it was.
It's about controlled immigration. That fundamentally has been the message of this government. It's about an immigration system that works and delivers and ensures that we have the people in this country who, well, A, that we know who they are, and B, that we have some control of the numbers. And the government...
We have that in a minute.
I think there's much more to do. I think the government would say there is much more to do. We were left a legacy of absolute chaos. Labour had lost control of our borders, and net immigration was spiralling way out of control. This is a very complex and nuanced area of policy.
But net immigration is far higher over the last 5 years than it was over the previous 5 years.
Well, that's in
But
large
over the last
part,
10 years,
that's in large part because of the divergent economic prospects of different areas of Europe. So that Britain has been a jobs factory, and whilst the EU has stagnated, and that's created.
You can't just blame the Labour Party.
No, I'm not. This is about wide-ranging economic factors. This is about the fact that Yorkshire created more jobs than the whole of France last year, and therefore, if you're French, it's not unreasonable to want to come to where there's places to work. On the
I
specific
think that's
issue,
an important point, because immigration is actually good for the economy. One of the reasons that our economy is the fastest growing economy in Europe is because the immigrants are coming here and contributing and doing the work that other people might not want to do.
Okay, we'll come to Terry and then we'll move on.
Regarding students, encouraging students to come here from all parts of the world, one of the great things about the way our society is developing is the cosmopolitan nature of it. The different flavours within our society, and students from different parts of the world add to that. If a student comes from India and wants to stay, wonderful. And regarding the number of doctors and nurses over the last 5 years, they haven't just suddenly appeared. They were invested into university by the Labour government to go through their 7 and 8 year training period, and it's only now they have got their
Yeah,
qualifications.
but we're funding
and
their
have come
jobs,
into the
Terry.
NHS.
We're funding their
They've
jobs,
come into the
aren't we?
NHS as a result of the Labour policies of the previous 10 years. So for the Tories to claim that it's their policy,
hang on.
they're riding on the coattails
No,
of
we're
Labour
not.
achievements.
It's about whether
in
we can
training
afford to.
NHS
It's not whether
staff.
they were trained, Terry. It's whether that we can afford to pay for their posts. And the bottom line is, if
There
you
aren't
look
any
at
unemployed doctors in this country.
if you look at countries like Greece or Portugal, where they've lost control of public spending, where they've had to make sharp and unplanned reductions in their ability to pay for their health services, public spending on the NHS in Portugal is down 14%. In Greece, it's down 17%. That's what happens when you lose control of your economy. That's what happens when you have governments which have no economic plan about how to keep the lights on.
And that's what would have happened to the
Agency
UK.
workers coming from abroad, agency nurses getting paid a fortune through agencies, and because there aren't enough nurses in this country being trained by the incumbent government. This government has abdicated its responsibility to the NHS. It's relied on the good figures from the Labour Party in the previous 5 years and has not invested in new
Okay,
training.
we'll move on because I think we're digressing a little bit. I'm aware we only have 10 minutes of airtime left. So just to try and put another bit of a twist in it. Try not to think of yourselves as candidates so much as standing for a political party, but candidates standing in the North East. In terms of regeneration for the town, would you be willing to work as a coalition? How would you work? Simon, you obviously work on the Education Select Committee.
I do.
So you do work with people from other parties. Would you be willing to work with any other candidates if they're elected?
We've shown over the last 5 years that coalition can work if you have to make it work. And our preference obviously is for a majority Conservative government. That's what we're working flat out to achieve, because that ultimately we think is the best way to deliver the policies the country needs.
It's the best way to deliver cuts. That's what a majority Conservative.
No, it's about the best way to
government
deliver economic security and better public services. But on the specific issue of Middlesbrough, and you talk about the fact that I work as an advisor to the chairman of the Education Select Committee, school standards in Middlesbrough, that will be my single big takeaway issue. Middlesbrough is one of only 13 local authorities in the whole of the country where young people have a less than 50% chance of going to a good or outstanding secondary school. That directly contributes to the fact that Middlesbrough has a rate of youth unemployment which is almost double the national average. School standards up the road in Sunderland, 72% of kids get to go to a good or outstanding secondary there. In Newcastle it's 84%, in Durham it's 91%. What is going wrong in Middlesbrough schools? The answer lies in Ofsted's report in 2014, which said that the local authority, Labour-dominated, Labour-run for generations, is simply not in a position to hold schools to account, or, quote-unquote, doesn't know the schools in its charge well enough. That will be my single biggest issue for the people in Middlesbrough, raising standards.
Terry?
Well, I've brought the Labour Party manifesto for Middlesbrough along with me.
Right.
I don't know if any of the other parties have manifestos for Middlesbrough, but we do. And we believe in making it's for Middlesbrough to be fairer, safer, stronger. Fairer in the way that people are treated from the point of view of being driven into poverty, taking out loans from money lenders who may be charging 2,000% interest rate.
Which we've legislated against.
Yes,
When you didn't.
now it's only 1,500 a year. So we've got to remember that the Labour Party are focused on what's best, what they perceive as being better for the development of business in Middlesbrough, the development of social care for the elderly and the infirm, and also education and youngsters with we're opening a bank account for all youngsters. We're ensuring that each young student will hopefully get an allowance to attend school with an EMA.
But the question was, would you work with other parties to succeed?
We do work with other parties because Middlesbrough, being a cosmopolitan town, has a lot of different constituent flavours.
If you're elected to council and Simon was elected as MP, would you work with him?
Of course.
Okay. Fantastic. Drew Downey.
Well, let's look at this from a Teesside viewpoint, because obviously I'm the candidate for Stockton South, so I won't focus on Middlesbrough. But from a Teesside viewpoint, what the Lib Dems would like to see is devolution to Teesside, giving Teesside much more control over infrastructure, over investment spending. We've seen with the Regional Growth Fund has come in and funded the Hitachi rail. They're doubling the size of that plant, and what we want is more investment and infrastructure spending for Teesside. And on the subject of would the Lib Dems work with other parties, it is in the way that we are that we work with other parties.
Hannah?
Yeah, I think a big problem I think that people haven't touched upon is like in Middlesbrough especially is that I think there's a big disparity between the student population and the local community population, and I think there should we should be putting bridges in place to help those two communities integrate together. I think there's a lot of bad press and a lot of bad conversations on both sides. Why can't we have more activities between the local community and between students? So working with the university, for example, to help put on activities for the local community. Our students could deliver sports training or things like that for children in the local community. Also, I think another big issue is retaining of students after they've graduated from Teesside University. We have a lot of students that don't stick around in this area. I love the area, but we've got a lot of students that don't stick around in this area once they've graduated. Why is that? Is it because we don't have the jobs here? No.
Okay, Steve.
Yeah, just briefly, I'm a massive believer in the fact that certainly in local politics it should be more about the individual rather than the party. And in my constituency we're in quite a unique position. Half it's in Middlesbrough Council, half it's in Redcar Council. We're in a very real possibility that we might have a Labour-run council in Middlesbrough, an independent mayor in Middlesbrough and a UKIP MP in Middlesbrough South. So we'd have to work together. There's no ifs or buts on that.
Okay, that's great. Just one final question then, just to kind of end it. So obviously, as we kind of talk about the North East is probably one of the biggest battlegrounds for this election. Why do you think you can win? Hannah, I'll come to you first.
I think obviously Middlesbrough's never had a Green candidate before. I'm standing for the simple reason that people have never had the opportunity to vote Green before. People should be able to vote for who they want to vote for, and that's the simple reason. That's why I'm standing. And I've no idea what to expect from the votes, but come election day, we'll see. We'll see what kind of a community and what kind of a reaction we've got from people voting Green. But I strongly believe that people in the North East and people in Middlesbrough especially should vote Green because we're the only party actively fighting against austerity, privatisation and cuts, really.
True.
Well, the Lib Dems want a stronger economy and a fairer society. If people vote for Labour, then we know that they're going to drag out austerity, that they're going to take too long to deal with the deficit. If they vote for the Tories, they know that they're going to get very, very tough cuts. And the Lib Dems want to provide a stronger economy and a fairer society.
Sorry.
We care for people. It's people first. It's working class people that we need to look after. It's the people who want a job, people who need to get out, earn the money, earn that independence. And if you work hard, you deserve to have a bit of leisure time. We're looking to provide people with rewards for the hard work, and that's what people associate with the Labour Party. They know that we will look after their best interests. We're the party for their interests.
Okay, Steve.
We need something different. For 100 years now, the choice has been Labour or Conservative. The first past the post system doesn't work. We need far better representation from what people believe in. Parties like the Green Party, the Lib Dems, ourselves, Plaid Cymru, SNP, we've got to have a far better way of government. You wouldn't go out for a meal every weekend for the last 100 years with 6 friends and only ever 2 of them choose what you're going to eat that day. But that's what we've got in politics, and it's got to change. So voting for UKIP gives us the opportunity to get that foot in the door and then start to make real change, which is what our country needs.
Simon, I've come to you last because you're probably in one of the most difficult positions in terms of you're standing in Middlesbrough Central as a Conservative.
It's a very challenging seat for the Conservatives, but we won about a fifth of the vote last time, and I'm working to try and increase that vote share. But Teesside as a whole, as you referred to earlier, is an absolute electoral crucible at this election. You've got Stockton South, where we're defending a very narrow majority. James Wharton's done a fantastic job over the last 5 years. He's been an absolute tireless champion for the area. In Middlesbrough South, my colleague Will Goodhand, who's a super guy, he has been working flat out as well over the last 2 years since he was selected, emphasising infrastructure, emphasising opportunities for young people. He's been holding apprenticeship fairs. He's been a really positive example of what candidates can achieve. For my part, I'm determined to ensure that people in Middlesbrough who want to continue with our economic recovery, who prioritise exactly the things that Terry was talking about. If you want a job, if you want to ensure that you've got a regular pay packet, if you're on the minimum wage and you don't want to pay tax on it, if you want those things, then you need to vote Conservative, because we are the party which is delivering a fair, balanced recovery for our region, for our country, at a time of grave crisis.
Okay, thank you very much everyone for taking part. That was very good. And that's all we've got time for today, I'm afraid. But please do keep following our website. You can also like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, of which the captions will be across the bottom of the screen now. Until then, thank you very much to our guests. Thank you to myself, to Leonie, and goodbye.